So let's start. Which one do you think is the most important for
Well, I
thriving?
think we need to look at first when a parent goes, where do I start?
Yeah.
What I discover is the first one, self confidence, is really the foundation for the rest. And then
Mhm.
you can go any way you want. Because in reality, what I discovered, it's not one trait that's going to do it. When you add one trait to another trait, it multiplies or amplifies the power. So they become a superpower. Self confidence is you knowing who the heck your kid is. And without
Mhm.
that, you're going to get nowhere because one of the most scathing things I discover is that too often we focus on our kids' weakness, not on their strength. So
Right.
it doesn't give them the foundation to be able to keep on going. Simple thing you can do. A thriver is a kid who knows who they are, not what you want. Mom wants me to be. So maybe take a 3x5 card this week and just start walking around without your kid knowing it and start marking down what your kid loves. What
Yeah.
is he's interested in, what he gravitates toward, what his tone gets more excited about. Now, there's a more sophisticated thing in Thrivers. There's actually an entire core asset survey that you can use to figure out who your child is. It'll take a little bit longer for you to do, but in the end, you can figure out what his learning strengths are, what his, it goes step by step, but you can do the same thing with the 3x5 card. You can also take time to ask him what he loves. What are you interested in? And then look at his schedule and say the key thing is, does he have time to be able to develop that? Because many
But
kids,
what if he says, I don't know, he or she says,
well, good.
like, I
That's
don't know.
great because most kids unfortunately don't because we've been pushing against him. So what I suggest you then do is start introducing hobbies as a family and
Mhm.
try to figure out what he loves. Grandma can come in one night and say, let's everybody learn to knit and see which kid likes it, which kid goes, yeah, it got me there. Bring out the marking pens and the chart paper and go, okay, let's draw tonight. Or let's just do woodworking another night. You start introducing different kinds of things. By the way, they may not be anything you love. The
Right.
key is to figure out what your kid loves. And that helps you because the fascinating thing when you go, so what's the big deal about that? What we also know is one of the biggest ways to help our teens who say they're running on empty really develop the confidence is to have them develop a sense of purpose over their life. That's driven by their strength. And by the way, Bill Damon, who's probably the foremost authority at Stanford University, is saying only about 20% of Stanford kids coming in know their purpose. As a
Yeah, so,
result,
so that's the next
there goes the
question.
empty. Yeah.
So, as you were speaking, I was thinking of teenagers because the activities you described, you can easily do them with younger children. But what if it's a teenager who is reluctant and saying, I don't know
Well,
what I want to do, I can't
well,
figure
he's
it
going
out.
to be reluctant if it isn't his strength.
Yeah.
That's when you got to go one step more. You got to look at the activities that are at your school. You got to look at the ones that are in your community. You may have to go outside the box, but some kids are debaters because they have voice. Other kids, they're robotic champions because they love that kind of a thing. Other ones, they want to get into the music or the art competitions or the leadership roles. You got to give them the repertoire and lead them toward that path. Or by the time they're a teen, they're going to be pulling you into the path.
Yeah.
Because the key, what we've also discovered is that by the time the child is 13, those kids who are really talented, gifted kids, University of Chicago put armbands on them and tracked them. And by the age of 13, they discovered the majority of the kids give up their talent, their real talent.
Yeah.
Why? Because they don't have enough time to practice it. So you gotta be crafty. This is not going to be overnight. It's going to be helping you figure out what is your child's passion because the first step to thriving is self-understanding. I
Mhm.
understand my strengths. I can accept my weaknesses. Mom's going to help me with the math if I'm struggling with it, but she's also going to let me know that, hey, here's your passion and here's where you're going. And that's the beginning of thriving.
And
The
so it's
beginning.
yes, and so it's definitely the parents need to get out of the way instead of having what we think they should be and what they should be getting involved in is having
Yeah.
them lead the path. As
Yeah.
you were describing that in the first section of your book, you describe a story about Aiden, and it's something that it when I read it, I had to pause and think. I'll just read a part of it. An unfurnished wooden puzzle lay on the
Oh,
table. The box covered children. The box cover showed children from different countries playing together in the world, but pieces were missing. A red haired boy named Aiden kept staring at it and finally said, "That puzzle is us. We're trying to fit into the world, but can't because we're missing pieces." "Which pieces are you missing?" I asked. "The pieces on how to be people, like how to get along, handle mistakes, cope with stress, that kind of stuff. Pieces that build your character and make you human. But we're being raised to just be products, so we feel empty." And I had to pause and wonder how many of our children feel empty. And do you remember how old Aiden was?
Yes, that was a group of middle school kids.
Wow.
But the fascinating thing was, I interviewed 100 kids one on one for an hour each across the country. And the commonality, these were middle school to high school kids. It's so open, so had wonderful voice, very smart. But I almost called the book Running on Empty because more and more kids used almost the same descriptor. It was to the point where they felt depleted. Now, where do you come with that? The fascinating thing is when stress starts to build, you tune out some of these other skills, your
Mhm.
backlog, particularly your empathy. And what happens is burnout. And that's what's
Right.
happening to all of our kids because they don't have anything to kind of give them a foundation. And that's what we're trying to do to raise a thriver is help our kids so they don't feel depleted. They don't feel like they're running on empty. And what that kid said, so many other kids said the same thing. We don't have the skills on how to be human beings, like how to cope, like how to thrive, on how to, if I face a problem, how to get around it. Because a lot of kids said, but my parents have been doing it for me, tracking my grades, doing all of that. And of course, it's because we love our kids to death. Let's be
Mhm.
clear on why we do it. But now we need to kind of push the reset. Maybe COVID was the reset